Ah, London. What a town. History around every corner and a tourist photographing it. Pubs serving up a pint and a smile. All that music, theatre and art. And multiculturalism. And the world's oldest underground, the Tube. The class of cities, really. Top shelf stuff. Only took 12,000 years to build it up, and one night to tear it all down.
Welcome to London of the future, one of the UK's most notable cities that still has a government in power that simply doesn't care about the pot-mouthed, beer-guzzling residents that inhabit it. The classic London streets remain prominent, but are now decorated with graffiti and people living deeper in the pits of poverty. Futuristic highlights to these streets indicate not only the growing dystopian image of London, but the rise of Albion's growing police state across the city. In Watch Dogs Legion, we join the city on the cusp of this attack on freedom, ripe with protests and fear. This is where DedSec comes in. Fans of the Watch Dogs series will know DedSec as the hacker group that fights against those who are in power by uncovering and exposing their lies to the public. However, DedSec often finds itself painted as the enemy, which is the case once again in Watch Dogs Legion. DedSec in the beginning is framed by an organisation, 0 Day, for some devastating explosions. This event finds the hacker group broken apart and Albion's hold on London grows stronger. London is now in a police state run by Albion, a private military corporation that controls the streets. But there are several other organisations peppered throughout the city with their own storylines to complete. I won't get into them for this review as they get rather plot twisty and dark. On that point, Watch Dogs Legion is undoubtedly the darkest in tone across the series. Unlike previous Watch Dogs games, there's no main protagonist who's part of an existing DedSec team already. Instead, you're given the option to choose one person from a range of randomly selected starting characters. From there, it's up to you to decide how you want to build your team by going across London and scouting people out and winning the support of both. As you wander the dystopian city, literally every person you see can be potentially recruited. This system is perhaps the most ambitious one for a game on this scale for Ubisoft, and the studio's done a pretty good job at achieving it. It allows you to fully curate your own team. Want a granny squad? Go for it. Want a team of punks? Absolutely. In recruiting people as your operative, most of them require you to do them a favour first, just so they know that they can trust you. After all, your organisation was accused of killing a large portion of the population, so that's entirely understandable. What's nice about the way these missions work is that they feel like elements to the story rather than simply side quests, but they require doing similar things, so they naturally feel repetitive over time. Sometimes it isn't that easy, however. Your actions across London can have consequences for potential recruits. I found myself clumsily driving around London's tight roads, running down loads of people accidentally while trying to deliver a parcel. I later found that a lot of people walking the streets of that bar hated DedSec, with some carrying notes that they were hospitalised by one of my operatives. Awkward. Another nice touch is seeing connections for both potential recruits and current operatives. If you choose to save them from being oppressed, you'll likely find the connected recruit may be more willing to join DedSec without having to do them a cumbersome favour. It's certainly a very robust system for Watch Dogs Legion, and even with a whole city of people at my disposal, I still found myself becoming attached to some characters. At the start of a new game, you can choose to enable permadeath or Iron Man. With these on, if an operative dies, they're gone. With permadeath on, if all of your operatives die, the game is over. While this doesn't feel particularly worrying to start, I started to make mistakes in gameplay, which led to the deaths of my two favourite operatives. The representation of different characters feels a bit touch and go at times. Character models feel copy and pasted with no differences in weight or height across the whole of London. Clothes, hair and jewellery seems to be what separates everyone from one another. Gameplay wise, I felt conflicted. Stealth is a huge part of Watch Dogs Legion, and I felt like it achieved this very well with a strong focus on avoiding firefights. I'd like to say that was because firefights were intense and devastating, but really, they felt somewhat uninteresting and clumsy. This is possibly due to the poor shooting mechanics or the fact that the enemy AI felt a bit naff. Enemies give up searches incredibly easy without doing big sweeps, meaning I could just go and hide in a corner and know I was safe. Sometimes in firefights, enemies would line up with what felt like no variation in tactics. Admittedly, as the story goes on, the enemies don't feel like they've become stronger in power, but instead in numbers. I found myself dying from being spammed by bullets, drones and grenades, rather than being killed by tactical AI decisions. I will say, unless you recruit people with access to offensive weapons, you'll be stuck using sluggish shock weapons instead, which feel slow. Driving has never been Ubisoft's strong point, especially in Watch Dogs games. The same is said for Legion. Steering feels stiff and janky, and the auto-drive function is terrible. I personally opt for a motorcycle as it's faster and can navigate through London's tight roads far easier than the cars, but because of all the tiny roads, alleys and bridges, pursuits are incredibly boring, and in addition to the lazy AI, they never last long. Hacking is obviously one of the game's biggest focuses and doesn't change much from Watch Dogs 2. In Watch Dogs Legion, due to the financial state of society, you don't steal people's funds like you do in the second game. Instead, hacking becomes entirely for tactical situations, or if you're bored, causing chaos on the streets. You do get to unlock different types of hacking methods that will work in your favour for stopping threats, with some hacks locked behind claiming boroughs. You also unlock gear that can help with either offensive or defensive approaches for missions, and quite a lot of the missions let you tackle things your own way. One mission required having an operative of the male gender romance a target. I did try using an older lady, who ended up being rejected, but I got my handsome lad, drove right up those damn stairs on a beautiful motorcycle, and bam, we ended up sagging. Mission complete, mate. London also feels busy with lore, NPCs complaining, passing conversations, lonely streets cluttered with homeless people, and homes and stores boarded up, screams of fascism cutting through the working class. But when it comes to lifestyle, there's not a lot to do. My main gripe with Watch Dogs Legion is that the world feels uninteresting for miscellaneous enjoyment. You can get drunk at pubs, play darts, participate in bare knuckle boxing, and play keepy-ups, but there isn't much to explore. Watch Dogs 2 saw you being able to at least enter clothing stores, clubs and coffee shops. You could take in their atmosphere and themes. In Legion, the most you get to do is get bladdered at a pub or stand out on the street in the rain at a closed-shop window in your underwear browsing their stock. The British stereotypes are heavy also, doing nothing but swearing in every fucking sentence, drinking nothing but alcohol and having bad teeth. Yeah, we swear a lot, but Watch Dogs Legion seems to amplify that to appear edgy and real, with emotionless deliveries. Considering the game was developed by Ubisoft Toronto, one of the studios that was investigated earlier this year for allegations of misconduct, it's clear that this is a Western representation of the UK. While on the subject of dialogue, I want to take a moment to appreciate the variety that is present for your characters. Each one seems to carry over their own mannerisms and accents into cutscenes, which I found fantastic. It really makes your operatives feel alive. However, some spoken moments didn't match the tone of some scenes and felt a bit jarring, as well as the awkward acting to top. Graphically, Watch Dogs Legion pulls itself around a bit. While the game looks great in general and the PC version has HD texture pack and ray tracing, it kind of fails in adding life to the environment. puddles don't react realistically to you stepping in them, gunfire looks bland, blood is barely noticeable, and if you jump in the Thames there's barely a splash. But if you were to stand and look around you, textures look beautiful. And as always in the UK, it is often raining, which means there's a lot of puddles for ray tracing to get busy with. On PC I was able to run at Ultra, with ray tracing at Ultra and DLSS at quality, and my GPU load was only 100 or so over the VRAM usage. 8109 megabytes was my VRAM usage, and the game was still running great. What was also nice is that the game doesn't come alive graphically at a set time. It always looked pretty. It just felt like the city was continually alive as well, no matter the time. I also found a great deal of non-game breaking bugs. These were just things that add to the comedic exploration of the city. The entirety of the London Bridge saw NPCs bumping into one another and swearing continually. People would randomly vanish, cars would randomly spawn on top of another, and a guard would randomly climb his surroundings. On another note, Ubisoft has done a bang-up job with accessibility, allowing players to make use of fully customizable captions, with the additional sound effects being captioned as well. Audio narrated menus are present, and the ability to customize the HUD elements, as well as enabling specific gameplay features to help with puzzles, aiming and more. Watch Dogs Legion is Ubisoft's most ambitious title yet, purely for the recruitment system that has been implemented on this scale alone, and it's a system that is done really well and complements the hacking mechanics. The game takes a far more serious, darker tone from Watch Dogs 2 and feels more focused on getting down to business and growing DedSec than enjoying your time in its world. Hopefully the introduction of multiplayer in December 2020 will give the game that injection of additional fun that the single player campaign lacks, but as a whole the campaign is a mixture of dark, gritty British drama with a heavy implementation of manipulating digital technology with hacking mechanics. It's engaging and enjoyable, and while the bugs aren't game breaking, they can be a nuisance. The recruitment system is fast, and those recruitment missions and bar opportunities don't feel like irritating side quests that make your role in the city more prominent, although they do suffer in feeling repetitive. All of this tied up in the image of a possibly soon to be London makes Watch Dogs Legion an enjoyable experience, but one I felt didn't match the quality of feeling as robust as Watch Dogs 2. What about you? Are you going to pick up Watch Dogs Legion at launch? Comment below, and if you like this review, subscribe to DualShockers.